While The Thing from Another World can come off like a light-hearted horror movie at times, John Carpenter's version 20 years later is about as horrific as it gets. It's extremely dark and depressing, all while having these absolutely incredible monster designs and effects. It's really slow and can be boring at times, but it's a masterclass in tension and almost refreshing with how bleak and hopeless the events turn out to be. There's no happy ending or uplifting message. Nothing goes right here. It's a horrible stay in an Antarctic hell, and it's pretty damn good. It's hard to go into this without spoiling at least part of it, so if you've never seen this movie, then I'll just say right off the bat that I recommend it, and it's best if you go into it with as little previous information as you can. Keep in mind that it is extremely disgusting and gory, so as long as you're okay with that, then I say dive right in. A group of United States researchers stationed in Antarctica during the winter are invaded by an alien with the ability to perfectly mimic human beings, as well as shapeshift and mutate into horrible monstrosities. The crew are unsure of who to trust, as any one of them could possibly be the Thing, and the following days devolve into paranoia as everyone turns on each other and goes insane. Alongside this internal investigation of who's been compromised, some of the crew track down the origins of the Thing, but the majority of the movie focuses on character interactions and the decisions they have to make. That being said, even though much of the focus is on character interactions, I found most of them to be pretty generic. They all have their own little personalities, like Palmer being into alien conspiracy theories and Childs being a bit of a badass, and you can also separate much of the group into either scientists or general workers. But even so, many of the characters still feel interchangeable. What I got out of it isn't the individuals, but rather the group and how easily everything can fall apart. Everyone is equally exhausted, in fear of their lives, in fear of their sanity, and they have nowhere to run or anyone to ask for help. What I personally find as the movie's greatest strength is its setting. I suppose if there's an exception to all that, it would be the actor Kurt Russell playing the character MacReady. He ends up becoming the de facto leader of the group, and you see how he's willing to take charge, to make the tough decisions that no one else would, whether or not they agree with him, or whether or not he's particularly sane. Something the storytelling in the movie does well is very simple foreshadowing. It does the minimum dialogue to tell you what kind of character MacReady is and how far he's willing to go when he feels that he's been wronged, again, regardless of his questionable sanity.
Your move, king to rook 1. My move, rook to knight 6. Checkmate. Checkmate.
Cheeky bitch.
The film also gives you just enough exposition to explain the situation that everyone's in and to help emphasize just how cut off from society these people are.
Come on, come on.
Nobody.
Nobody. Get a hold of somebody. Get a hold of anybody. We gotta report this mess.
Look, I haven't been able to reach shit in 2 weeks. I doubt if anybody's talked to anybody on this entire continent, and you want me to reach somebody.
Presentation-wise, it's great in a lot of ways. Similar to the 1951 original film that this took inspiration from, the Antarctic base feels pretty realistic and livable, as does the extremely cold environment, and just like the original movie, the characters start off dressing reasonably comfortably before the temperature and the entire situation slowly gets more desperate. The cinematography is really good with its tracking shots down narrow hallways that make an innocuous room seem sinister, and a lot of scenes are framed very well and do a great job at drawing the audience in. A big part of this comes down to the lighting, or in some cases, a lack thereof. When lighting is used, however, there's a lot of dull blue that I feel evokes a very hopeless feeling, appropriate for taking place in the Antarctic winter, and it's contrasted by all the fire that's used throughout, usually by flamethrowers. The idea of fire and destruction being the only hope remaining in a very hopeless situation is pretty surface level, but they do a good job with this theme. The musical score by Ennio Morricone, I hope I pronounced that right, it deserves special mention. It's subdued but very powerful, never being in your face and only making itself known when necessary. Much of the movie is actually pretty quiet, which further strengthens the background music when it does play. Unfortunately, there are 1 or 2 jump scares where the music spikes and it's very annoying.
Who's that?
But for the most part, the film is very respectful with how it presents itself. And I should mention that there are other jump scares, but those ones are earned and very effective at how they're used in the movie. While Kurt Russell may play the main character, it's the practical effects and puppetry that are the real star of the show. I've never seen anything this good, certainly not from this early of an era. It's unbelievable how much they're able to do with such small models seemingly spawning limbs from out of nowhere. The facial expressions on some of these thing mutations is next level. Seriously, the practical effects are absolutely amazing. And the tentacles are so awesome. The way they rapidly slither around is so gross and crazy looking. They clearly put a lot of effort towards camera perspectives and false sets to give the illusion of realism, and holy hell did they nail it. If you're gonna watch The Thing for any reason at all, this is it. Unfortunately, there are some things that I found to be a little weak. For the most part, the movie does a great job at not explaining anything and letting the audience learn along with the characters, but then it feels the need to explain things anyway, and sometimes in really goofy ways, like this magic computer program that makes no sense. It also feels like there's a couple of minor plot holes and general inconveniences. For one thing, the rules behind how the thing works is never fully explained or explored. And while I understand the hypocrisy when I just said I don't want too much exposition, it also goes to the other extreme where it seems impossible to know when or how certain characters become infected, how long the imitation process takes, or how it works at all. We get little glimpses here and there, which is normally exactly the amount I'd like, but this also gets used as an excuse for some surprise betrayals. This wouldn't be such a problem if characters weren't constantly separating themselves from the group and staying in rooms by themselves for extended periods of time. Hell, even after MacReady specifically says,
Now nobody gets out of my sight.
he still finds excuses to split up the group. To be fair, the movie does about as well with this aspect as can be expected, but it does feel cheap and it's a little bit of a problem when it's the point of the whole movie. Take that as you will, it's still done very well, but it does irk me a little bit. However, what is very effective, and what I do love about the way that the thing works, is that for as horrifying and powerful as it is, it's also very slow and very vulnerable. That's a big part of what makes the setting and storytelling so interesting and unsettling. The Thing isn't some unstoppable rampaging monster, it's a shadow that feeds on paranoia and wins by pitting the humans against themselves.
At any time, anywhere, if it did get to him.
Hey, look, Childs, come on.
When the lights went out.
That would have been the perfect time.
Right. You said guys were missing, and Winters, where were you?
Hey, Palm, we're at 2 minutes.
Where were you? When the lights went out.
That's what it was! The players against each other!
Granted, a big part of the reason why the Thing is so vulnerable and its mutations are so slow and pretty ineffective is likely due to the limited technology available at the time to make this movie. This was clearly made with the vision to use elaborate models and puppetry, but in doing so, that likely sacrificed greater freedom of movement. That's why there's a scene of the thing just sitting there while it's set on fire, and it's so rare for it to be proactive in a killing. There's only so much that can be done with the puppets and still make it look good. However, in working around this limitation, director John Carpenter and his team created this fascinating scenario, with a lesser focus on gung-ho action heroes and more so on investigation, trust, and betrayal, all fueled by a third party orchestrating their demise. Something that's worth mentioning is the thing's influence and perhaps inspiration for the entire social deduction genre. One of the earliest examples of this is a party game called Mafia, in which players must figure out and eliminate who among them is part of a secret criminal organization before the innocent members are betrayed and killed off one by one. The genre has been utilized and evolved many times over in games such as Werewolves Within, Secret Hitler, Unfortunate Spacemen, and by far most famously of all, Among Us. In fact, right down to the alien creature disguised as a human, the isolationist setting, theme of paranoia, and how the game essentially forces all the players to split up, it's not a stretch at all to see how influential the thing has been in at least popularizing this idea. And if not for the concept, then without any doubt for the monster designs. From the shapeless, indescribable monsters of the Silent Hill series, to the body horror of Parasite Eve that straight up rips off the thing. Its influence can be seen many years later, and it goes well beyond the scope of this film. To reiterate, I do think the thing is a bit flawed. Like I said at the start, some scenes can drag on and the movie can be a bit boring. And there are some excuses that let the plot get away with too much. All that said, the positives far outweigh the negatives, and even with those negatives, I understand that they're implemented in a specific way for the strength of the film. It is a very bloody and incredibly disgusting movie. Not a whole lot of films come anywhere close to matching the thing in this regard, and certainly not on its level of practical or special effects, or its artistry with great lighting and cinematography. This movie is just crazy in so many ways. I do respect this movie a ton, but it's not quite up there with some of my bigger favorites that I've reviewed in the past, such as Drive, The Babadook, or Christine. But I don't want that to come off as though I think this is a weaker movie by any means. Whether it's the maddening story, the depressing setting, or just to appreciate how influential it's been on future projects, I really think this is a must-watch for horror fans. Thanks for watching my review on The Thing.